Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome, folks, to Season 17 of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am excited to bring you today's show for so many reasons. One, we're starting on a new album. That's always cool. Got some lineup changes that are going to change the sound and the feel of the band yet again. That's always interesting. And we have two versions of the song today to actually listen to, dig into the differences a little bit. It's an extended version, so not a huge amount of difference, but one that we're going to get into just the same. Not only that, but I am excited because it's actually a song that I know. I grew up listening to this song. It's called Hold Your Head Up. The original that I know is by Argent. And we're going to get into all of those cool things. But starting a new season, we got to talk about lineup changes, the album cover, and all that good stuff. We do have some remaining members. Of course, we have Mick Box on guitar. On drums, we have Kerslake returning. On bass, we have Trevor Boulder. But introducing a new keyboardist who is still with the band, Phil Lanzon. Not only is Phil an amazing keyboardist, he's a great composer. I've gotten the first of his two solo albums and the ones that I'm aware of. And I have to tell you, it just blew me out of the water. At some point, I really want to do a review of that and get the other album and listen to that as well. I was just completely stunned, had no idea what to expect, but I thought the album was absolutely amazing. We'll be getting into that on my other show probably at some point. But I would love to. It's a great album. And then on vocals, we have Bernie Shaw coming into the band, who is also still in the band. And that's pretty cool. So here, just in 1989, we're seeing three members that are going to be solid members through the current lineup here in 2021. Long time for those guys to be in a band. Of course, Mick has been there since the beginning, since before the beginning when they were Spice. So it's really cool to see the current lineup now starting to take shape, even though we're still talking quite a number of years ago. And this album actually came out pretty quick. It looks like they wrapped up the recordings in January of '89, and then the album came out in May, which is pretty fast. Nowadays, some bands are taking up to a year after they finish recording to, get all the promotion in place, all the various forms of media, whether it be CD, digital, LP. At some point, I'm sure there'll be a new medium to discover. And then, of course, 3 weeks after the album comes out, then the deluxe editions follow, where they're like, oh, yeah, well, I know you just bought the album, but here's another version of it with like one bonus song and a video. And you can get that on DVD for another $16. It's really amazing how things have changed. But here, bands were pretty much putting out LPs and cassettes still. 8 tracks were gone, long before this. But basically, those were the two mediums that were coming out, cassette and LP. So it wasn't as difficult. And then it just came down to mass production. So the engineer has to hurry up and get everything mixed and mastered, ready for that final production. And then they do the run. And boom, the album was out in just a couple of months. Very quick turnaround time. But the cover of the album is really interesting. I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it because I can come at it from a couple of different approaches, right? For one, so basically here's what we're looking at. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you have the band logo, which is a really nice logo at this point. And then down in the bottom right, we have the album cover in a different font. The Uriah Heep is more of a 3D black with some white highlights on it to give it that 3D effect. And the bottom right is actually it's just a different font. It's flat, there's no 3D to it. And then we've got this sort of reddish background. It reminds me almost more of, say, like a volcano, really, because of just that tone of red, the whites and the yellows that we have. And it really reminds me something more like a volcanic eruption. And then within that, we have a face that has its eyes closed, mouth open, probably screaming where nobody can hear him. And that, I think we've talked about this at one point or another, but that is my one nightmare that is reoccurring from time to time, is screaming and nobody being able to hear me to save me from whatever danger it is that I don't even know what it is in my dream. And that actually, I'm pretty sure that came from a fairly early childhood experience. But wait a minute, the show is not about me and my nightmares. It's about the band Uriah Heep and this album. And so as I look at this, so there's a couple different ways I can look at it. I can think, okay, what was the quality of artwork in 1989 versus how we would necessarily do things today? This is very sci-fi looking to me. And I'm thinking of that in terms of like movies that were out in the 80s, because the face seems to be overlaid on top, and it actually doesn't appear to be like the full head buried in this cloud where it's like emerging from the cloud. It looks more like it was placed on top of it, and it's not a full head. So I can look at it that way, but I could also look at it and say, well, you know, in the 80s, though, this is really good artwork, and maybe it is meant to be emerging from the clouds, and just the way that it looks, it really is giving that impression. I'm just not seeing it. Because, you know, sometimes when you see a picture a certain way, you can't unsee it. So for me, I'm seeing it with that head just kind of coming out or being overlaid instead of coming out. So for me, that's what it is. It looks like just a piece of form or something that was laid on top of this, bursting cloud of white and reds and yellows. But it's a really cool album cover. I love how the concept actually plays into the title, you know, because you can feel with the person's eyes being shut. I'm just going to call him the guy because it looks like a guy. I mean, I'm going to say, you know, it just looks like he's just, you know, got all this pent up. Maybe he wasn't able to speak while he was in the cloud, and now that he's pushed out, he can let it all out. The mouth is open in an obvious scream. Yeah, it's really interesting album cover. I don't really feel like the eyes, though, are squished shut in like anger or the kind of rage that you would expect. They're just kind of closed, maybe a little bit of tension in them. But it's really more the mouth, I think, that gives it the definition. But I like that it plays into the title. I love the colors of it. I think it's a very unique cover. It really does fit in with Uriah Heep and some of the other covers that we've seen. I mean, they've really run the gambit of different styles of cover, from sort of cartoonish but serious looking to just pictures of the band in different poses and just being statues and things like that, to weird desert landscapes, to this face that just is being tormented. And yeah, I can certainly identify with that. But it's a really cool cover. I really like it. And then you know, with the lineup changes and everything, we're expecting a completely different band. Although I would say in prediction, I'm going to say that I think that here from the Abominog album going forward, we are now a primarily guitar-oriented band with a very talented keyboard player. And that's pretty much what I expect going forwards. I do expect some great keyboard work and some great keyboard songs, but I think, you know, once they establish that sort of hard edge sound with Abominog, and just thinking where they're at now with Living the Dream, of course, they're in the studio recording a new album now as I record this. Maybe not right this second. I don't know. It's the middle of the night in England, but for them, you know, just to see that progression. But I think Abominog was like the pivotal point of changing that sound. And but you know, the players that are in this band are always phenomenal, and that's why they get the spot in this band. So as we move forward into season 17 already, that's just kind of hard to believe. So I said who was in the band, but we have a couple of additions on this album. I don't know exactly where the credits are necessarily attributed to, because I was not able to find information on that. We have Brett Morgan, who is credited on drums, and Frank Riccati, who is credited on percussion. We may be able to hear the percussion. I don't know what song or songs Brett played on or why. You know, Lee Kerslake is a pretty solid drummer, but there may have been something that they just decided to have a guest. I'm not sure. When we get to the song When the War is Over, I do know that the string parts were arranged and played by Phil Lanzon. And then on the song Cry Freedom, we have some Russian words that are spoked. Of all the words I could screw up, it would be the one that talks about how to deliver dialogue. Spoken. by Marie Zakojeva or Zakojiva. I'm not sure which one it is. But the album was produced and engineered by Richard Dodd. Amazing how many times we've seen the producer and the engineer be the same person. I kind of argue that idea personally. I do all of my own stuff because basically there isn't anybody to do it. But if you have the ability, I think it's good to have, maybe two different people just to keep perspective of things. If one person is kind of going off in a bad direction, it's a good idea to have somebody to just kind of check and balance each other. But a lot of times with Uriah Heep, we've seen the producer and the engineer be the same person. And on pre-production arrangements, one Mr. Ashley Howe has stayed with the band. So really cool to have some familiarity still in the band, but yet again, a couple of changes. So we're going to see what happens as we go through the album Raging Silence. And let's just get into that first song. So this song is a song I remember we had the 45 of. I'm not positive, but I want to say the label was Blue. I can't remember what record company it came out on, but I remember, I can even remember in the 45, the little, what do you call it? The static pops and things that were in our version of the 45. But it's a great song, and it was one that I listened to quite often. It's kind of an empowering song in a way, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Uriah Heep changed it. I did go back. Elke had commented to me that she had listened to the Bryan Adams version of the last cover that we did. And I listened to it and I thought, it's okay. I really like what Uriah Heep did with it more. I think they put more energy into it. I like Bryan Adams. I think he has a good voice, but I find that I don't connect with him in an emotional way. Like, I feel like he sings the words really well and he has a good voice, but I don't connect with his emotion to the story. And when we look back at different singers that we've had in Uriah Heep, how many times have I said, wow, I really feel like Peter Golby is feeling this, or David Byron, or Ken Hensley, or John Lawton. So many of these guys that are just so amazing at telling stories, making you feel that these stories are real, like they're real events that they're recounting or just casually telling you about, but having that experience connection to them. And so I think that's one of the reasons that I'm not as much of a fan of Bryan Adams. I think technically he's a fine singer. He's a good writer, but I just don't feel that emotion from him. Not a lot of vibrato, very straightforward singing. I would say the one exception to that for me would probably be Heaven. I do love that song. I think it's an absolutely beautiful song. But again, this isn't a Bryan Adams podcast. This is a Uriah Heep podcast. So Argent was a really good, solid band. This song actually came out. It was written by Rod Argent and Chris White, and I think the original came out in 1974 on the Argent album All Together Now. I don't know if that was a reference to the Beatles song All Together Now or not, but anyway, that was what they decided to call their album. And so in 1974, they're doing that, and then in 1989. A good decade and a half later, Uriah Heep covers the song. There was an extended version released on the 12-inch single and edited version on the 7-inch single. So that's where we get our two versions from today, both on the deluxe edition of Raging Silence. So without further ado, let's get into Uriah Heep's album version of Hold Your Head Up by Argent. Well, I'm just going to stop it here because I've clearly gone too long without saying anything. This intro is really interesting because it does start out the same. I love that groove of the bass. What's really interesting is that delay and effect on the snare drum. It sounds not quite like he's hitting a trash can lid, but definitely sounds bigger than a snare. And that delay effect that they have on it is really nice. Great groove from the bass. Really good setup here. We're definitely heading in the right direction. Okay, yeah, I love the mood. It really fits on par with the version that I'm used to from Argent. Those fills at the end there were really nice from Lee Kerslake. But I think what they've done is they put what's called a noise gate on the snare and given it that, snap and cut off effect. And then they put a delay on it after that. I really like it, though. It sounds good. The bass sounds great. The guitars are coming in crystal clear. It's really interesting because, again, and I'm really now starting to worry, but the panning, again, seems to be everything towards the center. But with the EQs of the instruments, we're actually getting some of that separation that I've been really wanting on some of these other albums. So I would say so far from a sound quality, I think we have a superior mix to what we've heard on recent albums. So I'm hopeful. We'll see. Oh, yeah. I mean, just listening to this right off the bat, I can say I love Bernie's voice. And it's something that has that right combination of power and gentleness, but yet that grit and rusty sound. There's a little bit of that in there. And just everything that you want in a rock singer. And he's got good range. He's got good presence. It's hard to judge on a cover, but I just... I know his voice outside of this song, obviously, but just based on what I'm hearing here, if this were my introduction to Bernie's voice, I would say, yeah, they chose well. And we've got some great keyboards being played in the background, exactly what the song calls for. Real gentle organ. Doesn't need a lot right here, just enough to thicken the sound a little bit, back everything up, give it just that little bit of sweetness, makes the song work perfectly. Oh, yeah, this is beautiful. You've got such power right here. Very simple, right? There's not a whole lot going on, but yet it's very powerful at the same time. The backing vocals are very strong, just like in the original song. We've got some really powerful drums. I really love the way Lee's playing on this. It's very different from what we've heard from him in the past. And that bass is really cutting through nicely, just keeping a great groove. It would be a fun song as a bass player to play, I think. The guitars are strong, organ's strong. Everything is really coming together in this song right here. Great way to kick off an album, seriously. That was a little bit of flute flutter at the beginning of that part there. Nice transition. I can't remember if that was in the original or not. It sounds familiar, but I can't, picture it in my mind or in my ear, I guess. I don't know how you would say that when you're talking about recalling audio. Because when you say, like when it's a visual, you say picture it in my mind. But what do you say for audio? What's the term for that? Hear it in my mind, I guess. Hear it in my head. I don't know. Whatever that is, though. And but really strong, nice, great verse, real powerful lead into the chorus that we're about to hit. Really cool. I love this version. Okay, before we go into the next part here, I just want to stop and point something out. A couple songs ago, while we were finishing up the Head First album, I had mentioned how dry and minimal the toms sounded. I mean, very buried in the mix, not very bright at all. That fill that we just heard, that's how toms should sound. This is exactly how a rock album should sound. It should sound clear. We should be able to hear everybody. All that power coming through from each player, but those toms need to really shine and cut through in a rock song, and I think this mix is fantastic. Still a little leery of the panning because for the most part, we've got things panned center-wise, although it was nice to hear those crash cymbals out more to the left and right. Some of the effects are off to the side a little bit, So that's pretty nice. But the fact is, this is what I was talking about. So this is the difference. You can still have things panned towards the center, but they need to be able to have their own space, right? So you can hear everything that everyone's doing. Now, I do think there might be some keyboards that are buried. I'm not quite sure yet. But in general, we're hearing the bass come through. We're hearing the guitar come through. We're hearing the vocals very clearly. We've got the drums. We've got powerful toms. We've got a good snare, nice punchy kick. I could use a touch more, but I'm not going to complain about that. We've got really strong keyboards, but we can hear it. We can hear it. And that is the difference between this album and the last 3 albums where I've talked about that panning. So, yay. Damn, Mick Box, how long can you sustain one note all the way through the chorus? That was pretty cool. I don't think I can name another song where I've heard that happen. But that was great. A great solo, great lead into that too. Some great percussion there from Lee Kerslake. Really energetic. Nice little break before we're about to hit that powerful solo. Just really cool. And again, even during the solo, now the guitars were a little bit louder, but we could still hear everything. We could hear and feel that bass. We could feel the bass drum. We could hear the snare crack through. And it's all there. Nice keyboards thickening things up again as it needs in this song, especially during a guitar solo because you're losing your rhythm guitar. So the keyboard a lot of times will compensate for that and play, a little extra track, or sometimes they'll double track it with a full rhythm guitar and then do the solo over it. But either way, I don't think the song lost anything at all when the solo started. It sounded just as thick and strong as it did through every other part we've heard so far. So yeah, I love that. Great part, and great solo. Yeah, I don't have a credit on the flute that I found yet, but I will say it does sound like a real flute, although it may not be. It very well could be a keyboard. Even in the late 80s, the keyboard samples were starting to get pretty good. Now, the stuff that we work with nowadays are actual flutes that are sampled. They're not simulated. A lot of times back then, what they would do is they would sample an instrument and maybe do 4 notes and then, kind of digitally recreate the instrument across the rest of the keyboard. And that's how you end up with things like violins that can play on all 88 keys of a keyboard, when a real violin cannot play all of those notes. It only goes so low. And that's when you have a viola take over. And then that's when you would have a cello take over if you need to go even lower, or a contrabass. But in this case, yeah, it sounds very much like a real flute. So I don't know if it is or not. I'm still looking for any information on that. Maybe someday I'll find out. But in any case, it sounds great. I love just that little kind of comes out of nowhere and just flutters by and dissipates with that delay. Really nice. But this chorus, man, it is so powerful. I love the way the band sounds singing in unison on this. Very much like Argent. There's no excessively high harmony or anything like that. It's very straightforward. I think a high harmony might have thrown it off a little bit, and maybe they experimented with it. I don't know. But I think it sounds perfect the way that they did it. Absolutely perfect. Very respectful of the original song, but still sounds like Uriah Heep at the same time. And sometimes that can be a tough thing to do without making some compromises or some extreme decisions. But everything here sounds good, honors the original very well. And let's see what happens next. Boy, Lee is just on fire in this song. I mean, he's really coming out swinging for an album opener. I like it though. I think it's interesting playing from him. He's done some similar fills to this, but this is one where we can actually hear what he's doing very clearly, and I love that. I really like this build. I like how it started off with the drums. That was a nice way to kick it off. Love the guitar sound here. Mick's guitar sounds just the right amount of fuzz for this song. I'll be curious to hear what his tone is on the rest of the album, because sometimes when you're doing a cover, you may tune or do a different tone on your guitar that works with that particular song. So we'll see what happens in the rest of the songs, how Mick has his tone. But I really like what I'm hearing here. I also really like the inflections of the chorus that are very far in the distance. I don't know if you can hear them. Probably just depends on your listening device, headphones, etc. But there's just a very distant hold your head up appearing here and there in the background. I really like that. That sounds really good. And I like that it's present and it's something that can catch your ear, but it's almost so diminished that you might pass it by completely. Yeah, very interesting way to have the song trail off. It's kind of like we hit that peak of the power, and now we're just going to let it dissipate over the fade. Interesting choice. Really like it. I'm hearing two distinct guitars too. I'm hearing one in my right ear that's playing the basic melody of the song, and then in my left ear I'm hearing another one that's playing parts of it, a little chunkier and muted maybe, but definitely two guitar tracks there. But the whole thing sounds great. I love the organ. That's always been a big part of the song for me. And it was a little less out front than in the Argent version, but it sounded good. Really just used as a thickener and not an instrument that you would necessarily focus on. It's something that you hear and you feel it more than you notice it, I want to say. But fantastic performances from everyone. Trevor doing a great job on bass, just keeping the whole song moving forward. Great to hear Bernie and how he sounded on this. I'm not sure what effects they put on his vocals for this. The sound of the original version from Argent, being recorded when it has a certain element of that era. And I think they tried to reproduce that a little bit. And I think it worked well. Obviously, everything else sounded really clean, where the original Argent version, because again, of the time, is a little more, there's just that sound of the time over it. Like, it's not completely clear and polished, but it sounds fine. I don't know how else to describe it. It's not that it's muted. It's not that it's dull. I would say there's just a little less high-end EQ on the songs from back in those days. Whereas now, we're hearing here the guitars cutting through. There's a little more high-end EQ or gain on it. Same with the drums. We're hearing the drums cut through very well. Everything's crystal clear. And back then things were a little more warmed, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what the right term is. But if you compare the two versions, you'll probably be able to hear what I'm talking about. Just that difference in the sonic quality of the records from the different eras. But I really like this. I think it's a really great version. I think they did a great job really paying honors to the original, but still making it their own. A lot of times bands really struggle and they go off the deep end and make terrible versions of covers, which is why I'm not usually a fan of them. It depends, on what it is, if I like the song in the first place. Sometimes I've had songs where I didn't like the originals and I like the covers. You just never know. So it's always worth giving everything a chance. But I really like this version. I think it's fantastic. But we're not done. we have the other version to listen to. Now, I don't know when they went into the studio if they recorded a longer version and said, all right, go ahead and cut it down to, the album version and then the single version, or what happened in what order. I do hear some difference in the fills, so I'm going to guess that they actually played it. It doesn't sound like it was edited to me, and it would have been an incredible pain in the ass anyway, especially back in the late 80s. So I think they just recorded it this way. But in any case, the intro is a little bit longer, so I'm going to play that for you now. Well, I had to give Bernie a little spotlight there, too. Things don't really change much. It doesn't sound like in the vocal department. It's really all just extended out instrumental parts. But I really like it. I like the slow build of it. I like the patience of it. It's weird when you're used to a song moving at a certain pace, hitting points at, certain times. It's kind of weird when they're extended out and it takes longer to get to those times because you're anticipating something that isn't about to show up yet. So I always find that a little challenging when I'm listening to extended versions, but I like it. I think it's patient. It's still got that great sound, great feel to it. I could see why it was cut down a little bit, but I could also see that intro having some pretty good merit. Now, this next part is coming out of the first chorus, and when I lined them up, the original version did not have this section done this way, so I'm going to go ahead and play it for you guys. It's a nice little breather before hitting that second verse. Yeah, I think that was a nice break coming out of the first chorus, heading into that second verse. Nice to have a little bit of space in between the two. But I heard something kind of interesting in there. I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but I'm going to play it for you. There's almost like two beep sounds. They're not quite beeps. Like they don't seem like they don't belong, but they are interestingly placed. So check it out and see if you can hear it. Okay, now I'm going to play it again and see if you can follow along with me. And then I'll play it one more time on its own. So it's pretty subtle. I'm just not sure what it is. It could just be a combination of instruments that happen to hit at that same time. It's slightly off time, but it doesn't feel out of place. It's just something that my ear caught. Now it's going to bug me what that is. I'll probably wake up at 3:30 in the morning and go, oh my God, it was this. And say, well, I recorded that podcast already. But no, I really honestly don't know exactly what it is, but it's got an interesting sound to it. I think it does add a little bit to it, but I'm not sure what the intent or if that was just an accident. So just a little interesting piece of music. So this next part, again, didn't line up exactly the same. So it seemed a little bit different to me. I'm going to go ahead and play it. And of course, I've got to play it through mix solo because why wouldn't I do that? I mean, really, it's such a great sound. I just love that. Fantastic. Great solo, great sound. I love just the way it changes in the middle. It gives you a completely different feel. So cool. Great solo. But that piece was a little bit of an extension. And then now I'm going to play right through the fade out of the song because there is another extended section. It goes one more round and then the fade is a little bit longer. So I'm going to play that for you guys next. Yeah, I like that fade a little bit better, but only because when I was listening to the song, I thought it was a little fast. I'm like, I want more of this. Like, I kind of want this to just continue for a minute. I'm really enjoying it. So great ending to the song. I like the extended fade a little bit better because I wanted more anyway. Really good, though. Really great cover version. I didn't talk about the reverse cymbals. You could hear some inflections. Not sure if they were cymbal swells or reverse cymbals. They're pretty much in the background, but they add just a little bit of flavor like that flute did. Just a little extra touch of something interesting in the middle of an already interesting song. Heep are so good at that, as I've said many, many times on this show. But yeah, great song. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Bit of a long episode for your commute today or your dog walk or whatever you're doing. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun covering it. It's such a great song. It's really nice to have one that I'm already familiar with to be able to do a little bit of comparing. And I have to say, they did justice to the original, but they made it Heep. And I love that. Kudos, guys. Very well done. Welcome to the band, Bernie and Phil. We're going to be with you guys for a while and ongoing. And I love it. I've seen Heep twice, both with them in the band. And their performances on stage are just phenomenal. So much energy, so much passion, really brings out so much when you're going to a show. It's important that you feel that the musicians are playing not what they're supposed to play, but that they're feeling what they're playing. And he puts on such an amazing show. You just feel like they're in the moment, with every moment that passes, and not just like, all right, well, let's get through this song so we can get to this one. I mean, every moment is very clear and present. They're an amazing band to see. So I'm really hoping that they'll get back around to the States again. They've done some shows in Finland, which was pretty cool. Looked like some pretty big festivals. And they've just signed on to do another festival, replacing a band that had to drop out. So I'm really excited about that. They're even breaking away from the studio to go do that. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, great song, great album. Way to kick off season 17. Look forward to the next song, guys. Have a great day. We'll see you in the next show. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!